2008 Mercedes E350 intake manifold replacement. I'm Brian Essick from How to Automotive. I'm going to walk you through the process of doing that. We're going to get started by removing the top engine cover. Just pop up the cover here, the snorkel boot here, and the clip in the back, and lift off. And the fresh air pipe that goes through the secondary air injection. Most common reason for replacing an intake manifold like this is because these little arms on the actuators, the vacuum pods here, break, and Mercedes doesn't sell them separately, so you have to replace the entire manifold. So I'm going to start in the back of the intake manifold here, get all this stuff off, and then work my way kind of forward and around it. And so I'm going to start by taking the vacuum hose off here, and it just has a couple squeeze tabs. So squeeze and pull like that. These are the tabs I'm talking about here and here. Just squeeze them, and then the need to pop the vent line off for the PCV. Then on the left and right side of the mass airflow sensor, these little tabs, you can flare them out, carefully flare them out a little bit, and they unhook from the little perches here, and then you can rotate and take your mass air off, and you can unplug the sensor. Now we need to get the second half of the air boot off here. So you'll kind of pry up here a little bit, just a little bit, and rotate it backwards, and then you can work that out of the car. And also this vent line right here, you can go ahead and pull that off. Now that that's out, there's 4 torque screws, male torque screws you can take out here, and 2 a little bit below, and the throttle body will come off. Leave it plugged in and just let it sit on top of the transmission. Now that the throttle body is off and just laying on top of the transmission, I'm going to start by getting the wire loom off the intake manifold. So I'm going to start here, take the Torx out, remove the Torx, remove the torque around, and just follow the wire loom here. And everywhere there's a torque bolt, I'm going to remove it. So now I'm on the passenger side, and I got as many of the torque bolts removed as I could find on this side. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start unplugging the coils. All the coils and all the cam sensors in the front. I'll unplug all these sensors here, and what I want to do is get this wiring harness where I can lift it up as high as I can. There's also going to be a ground strap that's bolted to the valve cover, so go ahead and unbolt that. And then after you get that unbolted and all this unplugged like so, we need to pop the PCM up right here. And we're going to leave it plugged in, but we're just going to pop it out of its rubber grommets, and then we're going to remove these brackets here and here. And you want to keep track of them left and right. They are different, so set them aside where you can keep track of them. Once you get the bracket off here, then there's going to be one more screw underneath it to remove to help get the wiring harness up. Now that the wiring harness is up higher, now you can unplug your injectors. There's 3 injectors here, and then the same thing here. Go ahead and unplug them on this side. Now that the injectors are unplugged, you can go ahead and remove the torque bolts holding the wire loom on this side. So there's a couple here. Just follow them around wherever you see them. Take them out. So now that I got the wire loom unbolted a little bit, I'm going to unplug the vacuum line that goes to the map sensor here, and then also unplug all the cam sensors in the front of this. So I also unplugged all the coils, and then the ground strap here that was to the valve cover here. The Torx mount that was here. So now the wiring harness is pretty much loose. So then I also popped off the vent line it goes on these hoses. It goes underneath the pop it off, and then that'll give you room to maneuver this out of the way. So the next step we're going to do is we're going to take off the Torx bolts that hold the fuel rail on. Actually, before we do that, you're going to loosen the 17mm bolt here and remove the fuel line here. And then take off the torque bolts, and then we're going to pop with a pry bar. We're going to put them under here and pop up the fuel rail out of the intake manifold and set it aside. And you'll have to order your new injector O-rings. Once you get the injectors popped out like this, now you're just going to lift the wiring harness up as high as you can get it and take the rail out. So now we're going to go ahead and remove the 4 Torx bolts on the intake manifold on this side, and the 4 torque bolts on the intake manifold on this side. Here's a kind of a better view of them on the new manifold. So this is where the bolts are going to be at. So go ahead and remove all 8 of those bolts. So now that I got all the bolts out of the intake manifold, I went ahead and took a bungee cord and kind of just lifted the wiring harness up as high as I can. Did a double check around to make sure I didn't leave anything unplugged or plugged in, and then now I'm just going to lift the intake manifold straight up and out of the car. So now that I got the intake manifold out, there was a vacuum line that goes to the vacuum switch here. It was broken off here also, so I went on yours, check the condition of it. It's right here underneath the air pump, so you got to remember to plug this vacuum line back in when you install your manifold. So now we need to clean our surface here, and you're going to be careful not to knock the dirt or debris into the valves. So carefully clean the mating surface on the cylinder head there, and then also change your injector O-rings. So you definitely want to take the bottom injector O-rings off and replace them with brand new quality O-rings, and you want to lubricate the O-rings after you put them on to aid in so they'll slide into the new intake manifold, and if they're lubricated they won't pinch, they'll just slide right in and you won't have any issues. So we need to put our new gasket onto the intake manifold, and you got to take these little ears that are on here, right here, and they got to go around these little nipples and they kind of hold it on. So I like to push them on like so with my thumbs and make sure that they really stick on there, because you don't want this slipping out of place when you flip the manifold back over and try to put it back in the car. If they don't stick on there really well, then I would recommend gluing them and letting the glue dry. But don't put the glue underneath just glue them where they right in these spots right here. After you get your surfaces cleaned up, the best way I found to do that is with a vacuum and a shop vac and suck the debris out. So go ahead and look down into your valves and make sure that nothing fell in. And once you're confident that it's all cleaned up and nothing fell in, we're just going to lower the intake manifold back into the valley here. And what we'll do before we bolt it up is we'll slide it back a 1/4 inch or so, and we'll plug this vacuum line in. So you'll drop it in here and slide it back towards the back of the car a little bit, and then plug this vacuum in and then slide it back to line up the bolt holes for the manifold. And also there's one other vacuum line you got to make sure that you transfer over, and that's this vacuum line right here. Your new manifold's not going to come with it, and this goes to the map sensor. So you want to definitely make sure you transfer this over because once it's in the car, you know, this stuff is hard to get to. Your manifold should come with a new throttle body gasket too. If you didn't, then order that too. Okay, before I torque the manifold down once I got it back in, as I take a mirror like so and I go around the back side, and you can see from underneath with your flashlight and your mirror, and double check that the gasket didn't fall out, and make sure that you know, the gasket's in the right position. Once you determine that's in the right position, what you can do is you're going to torque the bolts down. So you're going to start. It doesn't matter if you're going to on the left or the right side or either one of the sides. So you're going to do it in a crisscross pattern. So you're going to torque this one down here first to like 9 foot-pounds. This one down to 9 foot-pounds. Back over 9, and then the corners 9. And then maybe hit this corner 9, this corner here, and then the final corner over there, all at 9 foot-pounds. These bolts are really small and fine, and they don't have a whole lot of torque on them. You also want to make sure that you got that vacuum line plugged in down there. If you miss it and forget to do it, you'll have to, after it's all torqued on and bolted, you'll have to remove the secondary air injection pump here to get to the vacuum line. So like I said, I just had before I put the bolts in, I had it slid back a 1/4 inch or so, and with needle nose pliers I was able to plug it in and then slid the manifold back into position, started the bolts. Now that the intake manifold is back in and torqued down, it's time to put the fuel injection rail back on. And when I did mine, this little electrical connector didn't want to come off, so I didn't want to fool with it or break it or anything, so I just kind of flipped it out of my way. So you want to make sure you have all new injector O-rings. So now I just took my fuel injectors and I lifted the harness up and slid it back in there. So I'm just going to put them all in the holes like that. And when they're all 6 of them are lined up where I want them, I'll push them all down into place like that. Just kind of with my hands push them in, and then I'll start the bolts and the 4 bolts on the corners and tighten those up. So the manifold's when they come, these ports are not threaded. These bolts that you took out are kind of self-tapping, so you'll just run them in until they you know, with an air ratchet or a gun, an impact gun, and run them in until they bottom out. You don't have to tighten them down super tight or anything, but so when you go to start these, the threads are not going to want to thread up because there is no thread holes. They're self-tapping. So now I took my bungee cord off and I kind of laid my wiring harness back over the engine, and I'm gonna start here on the driver's side here, and then I'm kind of just start in the back. So the sensors and stuff that are right here, I'm gonna unplug those. Plug those back in. So when I went to put the wiring harness back on, I didn't realize that it's supposed to tuck underneath the fuel injector rail, and I had already bolted it in. So what I did was just took off the two little bolts for this little bracket where you would lift it out with, you know, for your engine hoist bracket here. So I went ahead and removed that, and then I was able to slide the wiring harness back into position after I plugged the sensor in right underneath it. And now I'm just gonna put my bracket back on. So if you can remember to, before you put your fuel injectors on, tuck it under there on the back corner on the driver's side first. You can also go ahead and remount the little torx that held the wire loom down here. Now what I'm going to do is focus on this vent line that's here, because it routes underneath here. So I'm going to kind of route it under here and go ahead and plug it in now over here. So, and once that's plugged in, now I'm going to kind of and plug my injectors in over here, all three of them over here, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to just start from the back and just kind of work my way around, and then like the little bolts, the torx that we took out that held the looms, go ahead and put those in and tighten them down, and just lay the wiring harness in and plug in all of our coils, and remount. Very important that you remount the ground wires back onto the valve covers. So start from back there, and then after you get that all bolted up, then you can put your fuel line on and tighten that down. So now that all the coils are plugged in, the ground strap is back on, all the loom is secured onto the valve cover here, and the fuel line is connected. Now on the front here, we're going to just plug in all of our cam and crank sensors there. So just plug them all in, and if you disconnected any of the little catches or anything, you know, reattach all that stuff. And now you can mount this little bracket for the computer. You can go ahead and mount this. The same thing here. They don't. The threads aren't. There's no threads in it. You have to use the bolts. Just run them in. They self-tap. Now that I got those all secure and the bracket secure, make sure that all the sensors are plugged in here, and your map sensor's got the vacuum line hooked up to it. After you're confident with that, now we can move over to the passenger side here, and we're just going to lay the wiring harness kind of the way it goes, and we'll start by unplugging the injectors in here first, and then once the injectors are plugged in, then we'll lay the screw down, and we'll mount the screw here. So now that the injectors are plugged in and I got the harness kind of laying on here, I'm going to start the screw here. I'm going to go ahead and bolt the two screws in the back that held the wire loom to the back of the manifold. And remember, they're all self-tapping. So once they are secure, you can go ahead and install your bracket. So go ahead and lift your PCM back up and install your bracket. And then once your bracket's installed, you can go ahead and put the PCM back into the rubber grommets and push it down. Now that the bracket's on, the PCM is re-secured, I'm going to go ahead and mount the torque bolt that held the wire loom here, and I'm going to go ahead and remount the bolts that hold the wire loom to the valve cover, plug in the coils, reinstall my bolt to hold the ground strap in and tighten it down. So I'm going to work from the back, and all the bolts that held in here, plug in the coils, ground strap. So after all my coils and the wire loom are bolted back down, the next thing I'll do is plug in the secondary air injection pump here, electrical connector, and then just go around and plug in all the the cams plugs. So I'll plug them all back in, and then this one has a little catch here that I'll put back onto the cover here. And once that's all done, so now I'm gonna put my throttle body back on. I'm gonna make sure my gasket's in place, and then put my throttle body back on, and tighten the 4 bolts, and double check that it didn't come unplugged or anything while you're working on it. Now you can plug in the vent line after you get your throttle body bolted up. Just plug the vent line on, and then take your brake booster vacuum hose and put it on, and just push on and give it a little tug without squeezing the tabs. Give it a little tug, make sure it doesn't pop back off. And now we're ready to install this little elbow here for the snorkel. So the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna put this in first. So I'm gonna kind of put it in an angle like kind of like this, and then rotate it upwards until these 2 catches here catch on the manifold back here. So once you got it on and it's secure, you can go ahead and plug in the vent line for the PCV hose here. Go ahead and plug that in. You want to make sure that this is back like that. And now we're going to put the plug the mass airflow sensor back. Now I went ahead and plugged the electrical connector in first. Now I'm going to kind of get it in the ballpark area here, and put the rubber grommet side in first, and then I'll rotate it around and snap the little ears over the little catches here and there. And you may have to flare them out with your thumbs, but be careful with these. These do break easily. So when it's done, it'll look like that. It's flush on there, and the catches are here in the corners, and your electrical connector's plugged in. So now that that's complete, what you're going to do is just go around one last time and make sure everything is plugged in. And once you're satisfied that everything there is all plugged in and all your vacuum lines are connected, we can go ahead and reinstall the air cleaner. So now we're going to install the air cleaner. We want to make sure that this boot goes securely around the mass airflow sensor, and then these little rubber tabs press onto the little rubber tabs that are on the valve cover. There's 4 of them, and then you just, once you line everything up, you just push straight down. You'll know when you get it secure because the clip will snap on easily in the back. So once you got that done, plug in your fresh air port for your secondary air injection, and then put your 2 snorkels on. Now we're going to put the front cover on, and that just goes over to the little position and snap it into place like so. And that'll complete the job of replacing the intake manifold on a 2008 Mercedes-Benz E350. I'm Brian Essick from How to Automotive. I'd like to thank you guys for watching my videos. Encourage you to subscribe.